This is episode 47 of our Road to Unicum, and today we review the Panzer IV-H. This is a Tier 5 German medium tank, which is famous for its Derp gun. We're going to be taking a look at two replays here. One is of a Tier 7 Malinovka match, and then the second is a Tier 6 Abbey. I am pretty salty and sarcastic in chat, so if that sort of thing bothers you, you're forewarned. And let's talk about the great things about this tank. It has an high explosive Derp gun on an unusually fast reload. You can see here with food and vents and brothers in arms, looking at a reload of around 6.33 seconds, which is really fast. And the alpha value on the high explosive gun is 410. So you can one-shot a lot of the squishy tanks that you see, which makes this a very dangerous tank to face. And it also has superb gun depression of 10 degrees, so it's also very good about peeking over ridges. The downsides of this tank, the armor is relatively soft and it's not particularly agile. The top speed is decent at 40 kilometers an hour, but the reverse speed sucks and you're too slow to reliably circle strafe and flank most tanks. Having the high explosive gun provides a lot of utility. It not only packs a lot of punch, but you can easily track opposing tanks and damage your crew members. So their Leopard has been spotted. He's just sitting there stationary. Great opportunity for us to go ahead and finish him off. It looks like one of his tracks is off now. I go ahead and take that shot. The second one, even though he dropped my vision. This tank has a really high ammo capacity. I've never even come close to running out, so that's not going to be an issue. Because the tank has poor reverse speed, you got to be careful when you're on that flat shelf there, because if you get spotted and you're pretty high up on it, you're probably going to need a lot of damage trying to get off of that position. So I'm going to have kind of flex over and move over towards the C5 position. This will allow me to fire on their tanks if they're spotted along the zero line. They'll climb up to hill. And also the sniper's nest that's over near the F6 area. This is a pretty flexible location. Now you do need to be careful. You can see the AMX, the Tier 7 French Heavy, was trying to hang out in the same spot it does. So if you're a light tank, medium tank, or tank destroyer, a big fat heavy comes over near you and you're sitting in soft cover, you got to be careful, because if that heavy gets spotted and fired at, you may be the one who's eating the damage. And that's especially true in a battle like this where there are three already. I'm bottom tier, so I got to be pretty careful with my hit points. Now as soon as I fire, I get lit. And so I'm going to move away a little bit, and I'm going to drive kind of back and forth here in a loop, etc. Try not to be too predictable, just in case their arty's fired my direction. Now, at any given point in a battle, you kind of need to watch the mini-map, and here I make a mistake, right? I came out to kind of try to spot the T-34-100, but I was doing so without being fully covered by a bush. Really basic mistake. But here I'm zigzagging back and forth because there, boom, two arty shots came in, and I want to make sure to avoid those. And then their T-67 is rushing. This is part of the beauty of Panzer IV-H. That derp against the squishy tanks is just brutal. And that T-67 was probably trying to dive into our ditch over by the D6 area. If he gets down there, it's really problematic because he can fire on our tanks that are on the A line up towards hill, but more importantly, he can also spot tanks such as the M4 and me, who are on the sniper's nest, on the C5 hill, because if we die, there isn't anything to stop that T-67 from working towards our arty, and at that point, we're going to be flanked, and the game's going to be over. Okay, so soft cover, always important to try to drive with it between you and opposing tank. I don't have any concealment, the camouflage skill trained on this particular crew, but because the bush, I was behind the bush, whereas that T-34-100 was in the open, I have the spotting advantage. So I spot him, he doesn't see me, I put a shot into him, and then he just gets absolutely wrecked by a combination of focus fire from our arties and then from that M4. And again, I'm having to be a little careful here because their arties have already, two of them already fired at me, so you kind of have to always assume they're aiming towards you. And at this point I decided I'm going to go ahead and push up a little bit, and I immediately spot the Type T-34 and he spots me. So I was going to push up to the shelf a little bit in front of us, kind of over where D6 is, But, you know, once he spotted me, I have to back up. And, as a matter of fact, that M4 Sherman, the friendly player, should not have stayed on that shelf as soon as I spotted the Type T-34 because he's too close. In this case, so I'm sitting back a little bit beyond where the M4 Sherman died. There's plenty of soft cover between us, so it looks like solid bushes. So because of that relationship in terms of the vision spotting mechanics, if that Type T-34 pokes up out of that ditch, I'm likely to spot him before he spots me, right? In this case, he doesn't spot me at all until I fire my gun, I nail him for 360, and then friendly tank finishes them off. Okay, so we have a one tank advantage now. That's huge. Looking at the map, the most problematic tank for us is the T-34-85 based on his position. Now our French heavy, who finally went up to hill, is now coming down the other side of it along the zero line. And aside from our arties, I'm the only one that's even remotely near him, so I need to kind of push up for two reasons. One is to fire on anything that he might spot, and then two, to help spot tanks like that T-34-85M or any TDs that are going to be close enough that when I poke this middle ridge over by the D line, that I can go ahead and light them up. And being bottom tier, I need to be patient because I'm either 2 or 3 shotable by their tanks that are left in this game, and their KV-2 is just getting absolutely wrecked. And since I neither spotted nor was spotted, I go ahead and push forward, and I can see on our map their Panzer IV-H has pushed up very aggressively, but it looks like he's the only one. There was a Tier 7 IS tank that was spotted, but he's just camping the southwest corner of the map, and I don't like crossing that area in the southwest corner of the map unless you're in a very fast tank or a tank with a good turret. Neither thing applies to the Panzer IV-H, so I'm helping us win the northern half of the map, and by winning the northern half of the map, I'm getting close to being able to spot their arties. Now, our French heavy is dead. I'm looking for a shot here on this tank destroyer, and I have to assume that he's not the only one down in the zero line in that forest. Probably 2 or 3 of the arties are going to be down there. Potentially that medium tank who went running away. And I spot their Hummel, and it's super tempting to fire on him, but I don't want to do that because he didn't get me lit. There's enough bushes between us. He doesn't see me, and already finishes them off. And this is one of those reasons why you hear me talk about the importance of slotting optics on medium tanks. It's for that vision advantage. Vision is king. Vision enables you and your allies to have the first shot advantage, or being able to spot safely and not get counter-spotted. We're up 10-8, and thankfully our 3 tanks that were camping near our spawn point are finally moving up. And so, you really got to pay attention not just to the compositions, but to how players are driving their tanks. Are they clueless? Are they running into you, cutting off other players? Are they blocking them? And also, how stationary or non-reactive are they to situations? So those 3 tanks, the 2 tank destroyers and the KV-1, are finally pushing down southwest, because at this point we have got a pretty overwhelming map advantage, and I'm in a position where I'm going to be able to spot their already soon. But the reason why I mentioned this about those 2 TDs and that heavy tank is because they waited so long to push down, I can't expect them to either take initiative on their own or move in support of a player like me, right? And it's kind of unfortunate, there's a couple things that happen with newer players in this game, and this is even true for players even when they've been playing for a long time. When we're all new and clueless, we tend to take really poor approach lanes and get wrecked because we don't understand the maps, we don't understand the spotting mechanics. This tends to make players, once they're past that totally noob stage, of being really conservative and wanting to try to stretch out their time to live, but doing so in a way which is unhelpful to the teams, like sitting in bushes, camping too long, not supporting friendlies, etc. It's a really hard habit to break, and I think from players to get from yellow to green, you have to be unwilling to not camp. Now I spotted the SU. He's going to try to aim his gun at me, but I aim faster than an arty, even with a poor Derp gun, and I finish him off. So we're going to take a look at a second battle here. This is going to be in a Tier 6 Abbey battle, but we'll quickly review the scorecard. I got 3 marks of excellence from this battle. Did about 1,500 damage and 1,300 spotting, along with some kills, and it was pretty good work for a low tier tank. It's very rare you're going to see bottom tier carrying with a massive amount of damage, but I just carried that battle more so through finesse, using vision control, just being smart and patient. And it's really important actually to be patient when you have the lead. When you have a significant lead, you have map control, you don't want to blow it by getting too aggressive. I've made that mistake a lot of times. I've seen other players make the mistake. Just be patient, especially when you've got 3 arties who are in no risk of getting spotted. Just let the arty work. Right. In this particular case, tier 6 Abbey, there is no arty. What I often like to do from either side of the map, if I'm in a tank like this, I'll go down the 5 line and see if I can find a connection against a squishy tank where I might be able to seriously damage, track, or even one-shot. Now I'm spotted there. I'm actually not clear how I got spotted. If the Chaffee maybe was close enough to proxy spot me, that's probably it. But at any rate, I'm about to make a mistake. The one thing you don't want to do in this tank, you don't want to trade with heavies. They have too much armor, so you're unlikely to get a penetration, and they have too many hit points, and you're in the Pz.Kpfw, Panzer 4, you really don't have any kind of meaningful armor. Right? So you have to always assume when tanks hit you that they're going to penetrate you. Now, some of their squishies have been spotted. In this case, this Hellcat, which has paper-thin armor and is a priority target. You know, in a tier 6 match like this, he's got a gun that has good enough accuracy and penetration to damage anything. But I just, I just put the hurt on him. Watching the map, we've got too many tanks down along the 7-8 lanes, and they're not pushing. And the other problem is we have the opposite problem on the 1-2 lanes. We've got 2 tanks that are pushing into 4 tanks, and they're going to get wrecked. So this is one of those situations, just watching the mini-map, I was taking a blind shot to see if I could hit that Hellcat. But, most likely we're going to lose the 1-2 line spectacularly badly, and they're going to have a lot of high health tanks that are going to be exiting the 1-2 lane over kind of where this Electo is. Now, you notice I couldn't get my mouse, the aiming reticle, on a part of the Electo. And I've noticed sometimes that is the case when there's something like a destructible hardcover, like a fence between you or a wall. And in other cases, for whatever reason, your reticle kind of indicates you can't shoot the target, but in fact you can. And in that particular case, since I have a high explosive gun with a splash radius, it's just worth taking the shot, not just to deal damage, but to potentially track him, just like with this Hetzer right here. I hit him in that front corner, that drive wheel, it tracks him, and then one of our TDs finishes him off. One of the things that's really useful to do, so if you're in the north half of the northern spawn and you've lost the 1-2 lane, you can go back and help cover base by this area on the north side of the Abbey. So this area around D5, D6, it's a really flexible pivot point because I can shoot at tanks that are exiting the 1-2 lane, I can shoot tanks that are on our cap, I can come over and spot anyone trying to push up the 5 line. And so we've managed to claw this back now. We're tied again. For a while we had we're pretty far behind, and then this medium tank, it looks like he did spot me, but I had all day to go ahead and aim in my gun, and then I could have sat and just taken the shot and potentially eaten 1 round of damage, but I'm kind of like moving back and forth a little bit. He takes the bait and fires the shot because most of my tank was behind the building, right? And then in between his reload, I'm able to poke out, and he tries to run too late. The most dangerous tank, looking at what's left in their lineup, is that Japanese heavy. And depending on which gun he has, he can 1 or 2 shot me, and because he's got such thick armor, it's going to take a lot of shots from me to kill him. And I'm pretty slow. It's kind of risky to flank. Now this KV-85, he's doing the right thing. We've got a 2 versus 1 isolation here. At least they're Japanese heavies, nowhere near around nor the light tank, and so I should have pushed up around the corner up that little bump a little faster, but nonetheless, KV-85 and I partnered to finish him off, and then I had their TDs that kept pushing up toward our cap spotted. You get credit for that spotting damage there, and we have a 5 tank to 3 tank lead, so if we're careful we should be alright. And then their VK kind of makes a break out into the open. The thing is, I've been spotted several times. I was spotted when we killed the Churchill. The VK is driving out in the open. You guys saw in my light tank guide, right? You should generally not try to do that because he's potentially giving me a shot on him. You know, you want to hug terrain, use soft cover, be patient. You should never rely on your speed and mobility to save you unless you're running away from a bad situation. You never want to drive toward enemy tanks with your speed unless they are so dog slow or not looking at you or tracked or they just fired. You don't want to push toward tanks that know that you're there. The most common mistake in the game happens so often with light tank drivers. Very easy to prevent. Now the Japanese heavy just has ridiculously thick armor on both the turret and the hull, so I get a low damaging shot. But nonetheless, I gotta keep working the damage on him. I might track him, damage some crew members, jam his gun, who knows. And our TDs that were hanging out in our base managed to get some damage on him, but what's really sucks is this VK helped to finish them both off. But notice the VK, he took a really poor approach line, right? Once he killed those TDs, he should have sat up on the B lane, hid behind a rock until he dropped from my vision, and then slide out in front of a bush where he would have that advantage in terms of the spotting mechanics. He would spot me, maybe wait for the Japanese heavy to come over and shoot me, or the VK1 could pop shot me. But either way, you know, he was coming directly back at me when I knew he was there. You never want to run at tanks that can kill you if you can avoid it, right? So again, very common mistake. And here again is the value of having coated optics. I spot their T40, and this gives me enough time to settle in for a decent shot and then finish him off. The real wild card here still is that Japanese heavy. Now what he may not realize is it looks like our KV-1 is stuck. I wasn't sure if he was AFK, just a really bad driver, you know, tipped his tank over, but it's not something that the Japanese heavy tank may be aware of. So, and I know I can't brawl with the Japanese heavy. Again, he'll either one or two shot me. It's not going to end well. I'm too slow to flank him. So in this particular case, this is one of the few times where capping is the best possible option. And it's super unfortunate that our KV-1 drowned, because that takes away the mystery of there being two tanks against one. You know, if anything, that's going to encourage the Japanese heavy to come back and defend. But I got a couple things that I can work with here, despite the fact that I would probably need to hit that Japanese heavy 4 times to kill him, maybe 5, and that's vision control. So a lot of people do 2 things which are pretty stupid in my opinion. They'll drive around in circles in the cap because they think it makes them harder to get hit. That is somewhat true, but the better thing is to not be spotted in the first place. So initially, so hiding behind that little bush, but from that little bush I didn't really have a good field of view, and so I'm going to move up toward the front of the cap, and while this may look dangerous, what this does is allow me to sit behind this bush, and I'm going to outspot that Japanese heavy and potentially get a first shot advantage. And the other thing I'm going to do is take a look toward the 5 lane if he comes down that way. There are bushes there which will make it difficult for him to spot me, but I would get the first shot advantage. And if he rushed me, I'd back up a little bit, make sure the bushes are solid, fire at him, do that again, and once he starts to get close enough that he would spot me, go around a corner, pre-aim, so when he comes up, I have the first shot advantage again, and then dip down. So this way, maybe I could get 3 or 4 shots on him before he has a chance to fire on me. But again, you don't want to face heavies frontally. You want to kill the squishies first, you know, in the Panzer IV-H, and then take care of the rest of the tanks. I want to say thanks to Triumph SP for the T92, and I will have more videos for you guys soon. Take care.